Well, when I first went to Rabbi Kimmel, I was scared to death because here I was very uneducated in the world of Judaism. I expected to see somebody that was going to be with a long white beard and a coat in a temple, and I didn't know what to say or what to do. And I wind up going to where's it, Flatbush?
Flatbush.
To Avenue, 29th Street, to a walk-up 6-story thing, and I walk into his office, and I think I'm in the wrong place, and everybody was warm. Avram and Elke, they were wonderful. And then I went into Rabbi Kimmel, and he shook my hand, and bring tears to my eyes. I'm sorry. This is very painful. When I met him, he looked at me, and he knew I was very troubled. And he said, I see what you're going through. And he said, I think I can help you. And he talked to me, and he talked in a way that nobody ever spoke to me before. And from that point on, he said, he gave me tefillin, which I never used since I was 13, because I thought I'd choke myself with it, because I forgot how to use it. He gave me a talis, he gave me the 2 prayer books, and he said, I think you're ready for this. He showed me day one how to use the tefillin, how to use it, what to do with the talis, what prayers to say. And from that point on, I've been seeing him regularly for 2 years, and I can't tell you how he's changed my life.
I can't say enough about Rabbi Kimmel. Since I've met him, I have begun to learn to daven again. And my davening has changed, thank God. And I really know that the looking forward to Shabbos through him has become a wonderful, wonderful avodah. And he just knows how to be a father, a brother, a mother too. And this is Rabbi Kimmel.
Did he seem to know things about you that were impossible to know otherwise?
Yes. He took that piece of paper with my name and my wife's name and my mother's name, and he holds it up, and I don't know what he sees on that paper, but it amazes me how he closes his eyes and he starts telling you things about what you're going through and who you are as a person and things you need to do. And he even tells me things. I had a new employee here that he knew nothing about. And I went there, and in the middle of the conversation, he says to me, how's your new employee? And I go, what new employee? He says, the new employee that just started working for you. She's a young girl, and she works in the back, and she's very quiet. And I didn't even remember. And I said, yes, I just did hire someone. How'd you know that? And he said to me, I'll tell you something else. She's going to be leaving you the end of August to go to school. And I said, no. She said, that's not true. She said she's going to be with me all year long. The end of August comes. She comes up to me. She says, Dr. Valens, I have to leave. I'm going to school. So, I mean, these are things that he does that blows you out of the water.
What comes out of his mouth is clearly Ruach HaKodesh. He has a gift. He works very hard at it. He develops it. He is the most sensitive, and it's so wonderful. In my life, I've been privileged to grow up with great Talmidei Chachamim, Gedolei Hador in the family, and I've seen many Mekubalim. It is wonderful to talk English to Mekubal.
You know, watching this that has been in the office, and you sit outside in the waiting room, and you sometimes, you see newbies. You see people who have never been to Rabbi Kimmel before. They have no idea what to expect. And they walk out, and they're just like, they're like pale. Like, what just happened? Not that Rabbi Kimmel is like a scary person in any stretch of the imagination. He's actually one of the most friendly people you could possibly meet. But it's just, what just happened? How did he just know that? And it's just, I remember the first time that happened to me, that mindset hit me like, what just happened there? And it's just awe-inspiring to continue to see it every time you come. And it's every single time you come, you see someone new, not one person, you see a dozen people a day that come. It's really incredible. Different types of people that are coming from, all different walks of life that are coming for a little hashracha, a little bracha. People that need the bracha or needs the type, or just people that just want to work on the Yiddishkeit, and they want a little bit more of a connection, a deeper understanding of themselves and what their ticket in life can be, and their tachlis in this world. And they all come to Rabbi Kimmel.
Because of Rabbi Kimmel, things that I knew were important, that everybody knows are important, but never really took seriously because we don't understand the depth and their effect on our neshamas and on our mazel and overall things like basic things like tehillim, davening with a minyan, mishnayos, a very big thing for Rabbi Kimmel. Things like that, I've become more acutely aware of how important they are. And my life, as such, has improved in ways which I can't even describe.
As I walked in, I was a little bit skeptical. They told me about that he reads into your existence, for less lack of better word. I was a little bit skeptical, so I asked him to go in first.
Right.
All I did is I wrote down my name and my mother's name, and I was called in. I was seated right next to the rabbi, and I think before I even sat down, he told me that he wants to see my tefillin. So I responded that my tefillin was checked just about before the Yom Tov, last Yom Tov, and by Sofer, and it was good. And he says to me, I didn't say it's not good. He said, I see something that might be a problem in a tagim. He said, and he asked me to bring him in, and he told his helper, his assistant, that when I bring the tefillin in, he wants to personally look at them before he goes to the sofer.
Right.
And sure enough, I brought my tefillin in, and sure enough, in the tagim, there was two tagims that were facing the wrong way. They were leaning the wrong way. He also showed it to me because the Xerox stamp, and they showed me where it was leaning the wrong way. And after that, we got into a conversation. And the next question he asked me, he says, how come you're not praying in a minyan?
Right.
And at this point, I almost fell off my seat. I just looked at him and I didn't know how to respond. But I started telling him that there was a reason why I stopped going for praying in a minyan. It was for a while that I was praying alone at home. And he told me that I have special powers in my prayers, and I have to pray them in a minyan. I have to pray in a minyan. And he says to me, but, and he held up his finger. He said, but this time when you go to pray in a minyan, he says, no arguments. And the reason I stopped going to this minyan, because there was constantly arguments about their politics, and leftists and righties, and I got tired of that. And he zeroed in right on it, and I was just like, did somebody tell him about me? I mean, I was wondering what's going on. And he says to me, this time when you come in, he says, you say good morning, you go in, and you pray in your own speed. They pray fast, you pray in your own speed. They pray slow, you pray in your own speed. You finish, you pack up your stuff, you say goodbye, you leave. No politics talking. Again, he zeroed in right on what was happening. I was stunned. I mean, I was just I couldn't speak at that point because I was like almost like my life is a ritual.
Right.
And then he goes to me and he says, "Who introduced you to your mate?" And at this point, I was just like, "How do you know I have a mate? How do you know that I'm not married? How do you know anything? How do you know?" And I proceeded to answer. I said, "Well, a friend introduced me." And this is what really happened. A friend stopped me in the middle of the street, asked me if I want to meet somebody special, and this is what, and he goes like this, he says, no, he says, your parents arranged it. Your friend was just a shaliach. I was floored. Because first of all, how do you know my friends are up there?
Right.
How do you know my friends are not there? I mean, it just totally threw me to a loop. We talked about business. He was on a point about what I feel inside, about how things should be running and what is it I'm leaning to, and so on. I was just totally taken. Totally taken. And then just before the end, he's like, looking at me and says to me, and why aren't you getting married? So I remember I looked at him with a smile and I just said, chicken. And he smiled and he says to me, you're getting married. He said, you can keep being chicken. He said, you're getting married. You don't even know it yet. He actually was the reason that motivated me and my wife to get married. We were both in a relationship for over 10 years. We were very comfortable in that. And his energies, his push, his whatever, made us think about it, and we decided, well, this is what we're going to do. We got married. Baruch Hashem, we're living a very good life together. We have a very good relationship. We're happy. We're forever grateful for him. I mean, he became like...
It was a very good step up for you to get married.
A specific story that I heard from someone who told me that his wife was, I think, 8 months pregnant, and she was in a lot of pain. So they went to the hospital. She spent a lot of time in the hospital over this particular pregnancy, and he calls up Rabbi Kimmel one day, the husband, and says, Rabbi, I'm in the hospital with my wife. She's in crazy pain. I need a bracha. What should I do? He says, well, calm down, and whatever you do, just make sure that the doctor gives you a sonogram. Just make sure the doctors give you an emergency sonogram. Well, Rabbi, I can't make them crazy. I'm in the hospital. You know, you can't just ask the doctor for a sonogram. They come when they come and whatever. He says, whatever you do, just make sure they get a sonogram. Say this to him, make the sonogram, everything will be okay. Just make sure they get the sonogram. And he, you know, very reluctantly went crazy in the hospital and made the doctors come and do a sonogram. And as this expecting mother is sort of in like preterm labor, she's in massive pain, and they do a sonogram and they realize that as she's in labor and she's sort of pushing without really pushing, the umbilical cord is wrapped around the baby's neck. And on the spot, they did like an emergency C-section, and the baby turned out to be fine. But, you know, if the rabbi didn't calm down the father and give the father an eitzah and say, listen, just tell them to do this. You know, no one wants a screaming father running around the hospital. I'm scared. Come, give a sonogram. A sonogram is a very simple thing to do. Excuse me. You know, as far as I'm concerned, Rabbi Kimmel saved that baby's life, which is, just one life, right?
Yeah, he knew that something had to be looked at, obviously.
He had to know something that no one else knew.
He knew where I came from, what I was struggling with, what I needed to do for Avodas Hashem, what I needed to do for my own growth, what I needed to work on, what I needed to correct, and where I've been.
Without you telling
Not one word.
And your wife felt the same way, obviously.
100%. I have sent many people to Rabbi Kimmel.
Someone once contacted me. They have a mind. I don't know if people read the newsletters, but, I could attest to this story personally. And someone said, hey, listen, Rabbi Kimmel seems to, know what he's talking about, right? I'm a little arrogant about it. And, let's test him. I said, you can test Rabbi Kimmel? He's Rabbi Kimmel. You don't test the rabbi. He says, well, let's see. Okay, So I come sitting right here in this chair, and I went to the rabbi and I said, listen, here's the situation. There's people own all this land, and, they seem to have, lots of gold. Where should they look? We're talking about 40,000 acres of land. It's,
where is the gold?
Where's the gold?
Yeah.
And I'm sitting right here, and I still have the papers, and he just starts circling different parts of this, rugged map. And at the one spot, he circles and X's and circles and X's. He says, this is the place. This is where they are now. But this is the place that they're going to see a tremendous amount of mazel. So I run right back to my office, which was a block away at the time, and I faxed this map to this person in the West Coast, and he calls me up. 2 seconds later, he says, Shlomi, how does he know? How did he know? We are there, and we're seeing a tremendous mazel. I said, no, but that's not even where he said the big stuff is. So they went a few months later to do, testing, to do like drill testing, and they found more concentrated gold and silver there than in any other places that they tested. And they just can't get there physically. It's just hard, It's a very hard business, the mining business. But that's how do you know? What, he made it up? This is physical, it's something physical. It's not that someone's coming to you and saying, tomorrow you're going to tie your right shoe before your left shoe when you should tie your left shoe before your right shoe. This is not like a guess. It's not an educated guess. This is 40,000 acres. Throw a dart in the middle of 40,000 acres, and this is where it is. And that's a little...
That's pretty good.
I would say so.
Now that's something that can't be a natural thing. I mean, I can't tell you where gold is.
This is not in our country. This is not, he's never seen the map before. He doesn't know these people from beforehand. I just came as a shliach to, just ask, and he knew. How did he know? It's a coincidence. There are no coincidences in Yiddishkeit. In Judaism, there's no coincidences. There are people that are connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and are here to help us connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's their job. And every person that walks in here, I believe, walks out of here with that.
It's a Ruach HaKodesh. It's not. There's nothing normal about it. It's. But he's a very balanced person. He's not an extremist. He just has a gift that Kadosh Baruch Hu gave him because of who he is, and he works very hard to keep this gift, to be pure and to be holy. It doesn't come just like this. It comes, it's his, but he works very hard at it to maintain it. It's very hard for him. He sees a lot of people, and his heart hurts for everybody, but his tikkunim really work.
Sometimes he looks in my eyes, and he goes in my body. And I'm trying to say, get out of there, but he's actually in me, and it really freaks me out. But the energy and power in the room where he is a presence in there that is, you can't describe. There is definitely something or someone in that room that is really, you can't put a finger on it. But you just know that he's connected. And don't get me wrong, I'm a man of science, and I still have doubts at times, but every time I go there, he just takes those doubts and they go washing away.
Well, could he fake this in any way? Is there any trick that he could do?
No, there's no way he can fake it. But he's never off with who you are and who you need to be and where you need to go. So the real important things, he's right on the money all the time. He's a very caring, loving, regular guy. He's like one of the guys, one of the guys you can just meet in a bar and have a conversation with. I mean, that's who he is. He just puts you at ease all the time.
But yet, you don't feel spooky that he knows all these things?
No more.
Rabbi Kimmel is in a place that people wouldn't expect him to be. Physically, he's in New York, he's in America. Like, I don't know how many people expect to find like such a holy Jew sitting out, in Brooklyn. You expect someone to be like, tucked away in Sfas or somewhere in Eretz Yisrael, but he's here, and he's here for a reason.
Well, what my talents are, he read right into that. And again, it's like almost like he's looking at you. Your life is exposed. Your life is exposed. He can reach into every little corner in your life that you didn't feel anybody noticed that, and he immediately focused right on it.
Well, like you, before you went in, you were very, very skeptical.
Yes, right.
So if you would, and yet once you walked in, within a minute or two, he was telling you didn't even say a word.
I didn't even say, other than saying hello, I didn't even open my mouth. And right away, it's one after another. I mean, I got facts in my face. I mean, facts that, how do you know? I've never been in this area, never met you, never seen anybody in this in our office. Nobody knows me.
Right. What would you actually tell someone if you told someone about Rabbi Kimmel and the guy would say to you, "I can't. It's not true. Nobody can do that." What would you say?
I tell everybody about Rabbi Kimmel. I tell everybody about him. It's just like everywhere I go, and this comes up. I mean, right away, Rabbi Kimmel is my story.
Right.
Rabbi Kimmel is my story. First of all, he has changed my life. He really has changed my life. Because of him, I went to a more moved-out Fulin. Because of him, I did a lot of things. Because of him, I got married. Because of him, I'm happy in my marriage. I mean, because of him, he did a lot of changes in my life. As soon as my wife mentioned that she can go to see Rabbi Kimmel, I'm in. I'm going with you.
I know you went to Eretz Yisrael even with Rabbi Kimmel.
That's correct.
Yeah. Did you ever go with him to Rabbi Alfasi?
We went Rabbi Alfasi. I knew Rabbi Alfasi before I knew Rabbi Kimmel.
Oh, right.
And I went to Rabbi Alfasi, and I asked Rabbi Alfasi, can I go to Rabbi Kimmel? since I used to go to Rabbi Fassi.
Right.
And Rabbi Fassi says I should go to him, and I'll be I will be able to continue all my good things that I need to get done.
So Rabbi Alfasi endorsed Rabbi Kimmel.
Rabbi Fassi endorsed Rabbi Kimmel.
And he knew him well? You think Rabbi Alfasi knew Rabbi Kimmel?
If Rabbi Fassi would not tell me to do anything without knowing 100%. I spoke to Rabbi Fassi every single month on the month.
So Rabbi Alfasi told you straight out.
Rabbi Fassi told me to go straight out, and he told me to do it, and I wouldn't question it. When we went to Eretz Yisrael, the Rebbetzin Alfasi gave him his tefillin, and he put it on his head, and it was perfect.
So you actually were there,
I was there when they gave him the tefillin from Rabbi Fassi.
So you were there when Rabbanit Alfasi herself gave the tefillin to Rabbi Kimmel.
That's correct.
So there was a relationship between Rabbanit Alfasi and Rabbi Kimmel also.
Yes.
Any of the children also with the
The children were very close to Rabbi Fassi. They spoke to him, they confided in him, and they took him on like a family member.
They took Rabbi Kimmel on
like a family member.
So I think it was the second trip in Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Yitzchak called his Rebbe at that time, Rabbi
Alfasi. Yeah.
And he said to me, Shmuley, we got to go. We're in Yerushalayim. First thing we got to Yerushalayim, we finished davening with belt. He says, I want to go visit my Rebbe. So we called him up. We tracked down his number. He told us where he was living. And I don't know how well you knew Rabbi Alfasi. I didn't know him very well.
Pretty well, fairly well.
But I knew that at that time he was sick. He was very sick. It was already, it wasn't the year he was nifter. I think it was 2 years before.
Right.
I believe so.
He had some issue with the kidneys, I think.
I think he had cancer. I mean, he was very schwach. He was very schwach. And it's funny though, because when Rabbi Yitzchak called him, we weren't sure where we knew he lived in Yerushalayim and I think it was one of the remotes. But I remember coming down the road to his house. I remember we were driving down the street, and he was standing by the door waiting for us. I mean, the Rabbi Yitzchak says, "Okay, we're in the neighborhood. I'm coming." This is a person that had no strength. I mean, his koyach was limited. He was sick, and at that time he was sick. And he was standing at the door waiting to greet Rabbi Yitzchak. And to me, it was an awe. I mean, you know someone's coming, like Moshe, I kept you downstairs waiting for 5 minutes, right?
Right.
It's normal. The guy, you're busy at the door. It's also weird for a Rebbe to be by the door waiting to greet a Talmud. So to me, my personal impression was tremendous. So we walked Rabbi Yitzchak to the door, and Rabbi Yitzchak went in. We didn't go in, me and Dovi, we stayed outside. And it was like the craziest thing, because, I mean, we were tired, we were exhausted. Our whole trips are usually, high intensity, not too much sleep. But this was the beginning leg of the trip.
Right.
And I remember I fell into like a crazy daze in the car and just fell asleep. I don't know how long it was a half hour or whatever. Me and my brother just both fell asleep. And then after, Rabbi Yitzchak came out to bring us in to get a bracha. So, Rabbi Fassi sits us back down at the table, and he sat me and he sat Toby on the other side. Rabbi Yitzchak was there, and he said to me, he says, "Oh, so you're married?" I says, "Yeah, Baruch Hashem. You have kids?" Yeah. He poured me some of his arak that he still has from Baba Sali.
Baba Sali, he doesn't take it out for anybody.
Right. So he poured us some of his arak, and he said, I think he said that this is from the. And he gave it. We made a shahakol, and he gave us a very simple, easygoing bracha, like nothing, like he wasn't reading into us, it's not like we were there, like I went, like some people come to Rebbe. I'm used to seeing what people do to him, like they're challenging him, they're expecting him to tell him what they ate for breakfast 3 weeks ago.
Right.
It was simple. Oh, are you married? Do you have children? How's going on? So, okay. And then so after we were leaving, I turned to him, I says, "Can Rebbe give me a bracha?" Because it was very nonchalant. He wasn't yet going into, it was very soft-spoken and easy. So I remember with his two hands, he turned to Rabbi Yitzchak, and he goes like this, and he goes, "We have the bracha." As if he pointed to Rebbe and said, "That's your bracha. It's good." And then he finished the sermon, and we left. And I remember when we were sitting at his table, it's like, sometimes when you get too close to Rebbe by Tikkunim, your head starts spinning.
Right.
That was the feeling in the room.
Well, you're getting it doubled.
Yeah, it was. And that was one of the first times. That was like my second trip to Eretz Yisrael with Rebbe, and Baruch Hashem, from then on, my relationship built, and the foundation was so strong for me. That's why it's like hard for me to give out stories or sometimes you'll ask somebody else. For me, it's all one. It's life. It's not anymore It's not anymore like question answer or feelings. It's part of.
You're moving up.
It's part of. Like I remember, like to me also one of the things that drew me, Emistic, was the subtleness that he tries to improve people, never in crazy drastic ways, where Rebbe, you ask him for a bracha, maybe you should try learning for 15 minutes a day. 15 minutes a day. So I remember that it wasn't in the beginning. It was a lot easier to get in. So between my first visit and maybe my second visit, because I was dealing with somebody in the family at that time,
right,
that that I was constantly, I was nudging him. I know that. So he asked me, "So how's the learning going?" So I said, "Yeah, Baruch Hashem." So he said, "But you missed 3 days this week."
Right. That's
So that was like direct key. Like, yeah, I know exactly what's going on.
He would describe things about him. I never saw my father Muslim. He would describe things about them, or say things about them that he would never know because he never saw them.
Right.
And he was right about them.
But he was 100% right. As if he did know them.
Right.
See, because this is something that almost everyone says, that he just... It's normal to expect to see that
that he knows everything, right?
Right. That is an amazing thing. I mean, that's not something... Have you ever seen anyone else in his range that good that could do that?
So, I believe one Rebbe. I'm Moshe and I...
Okay, hi, my name is Israel Ruft. 2008, December, was a very, very tough time. Actually, end of November, I was working for a company, and I was in a very bad situation. I knew that I was going to get laid off. My boss was really, he was very, very bad to me, more than anybody else, and I just didn't know how to deal with it. So my friend, who also went to Rabbi Yitzchak, was pushing me to go see him, and I kept on pushing it off and off and off, but finally I was compelled to go see him because I was at my wit's end. I knew I was going to lose my job. So I walked in, and I was a little bit nervous in the beginning because I figured maybe I've done this avera, that avera, I'll walk in, he'll see right through me, he'll tell me that I'm a terrible person. So I just said, you know what, let me go in, let me see what happens. The opposite was the truth. I walked in, he made me feel calm right away. Even before he even started saying anything, I felt as if I had this huge burden lifted off my shoulders. So he told me that it would be a rough ride, but that I would make it and I'd get out of it. And he told me to do certain tikkunim, and I started doing it. And as he said, it was a rough ride, but when it did happen, I wasn't as broken as I thought I would be. I was hurt, but it wasn't as bad.
You were prepared for it.
But again, it was very, very difficult. But Baruch Hashem, within 3 months, I found something else, and it was miraculous, the whole story, because I was given a very, very good severance package that lasted me to the day. As soon as I started my other job, that severance package stopped, and there was no gap in income at all, so which was amazing. Okay, so I went to this other job, and again, I was experiencing problems. And of course, I went back to Rabbi Kimmel, and I spoke to him about it, and it was quite uncanny. He was able to zero in exactly what the problem was.
Was he like he saw what was going on the job?
Yeah, and it was like, wow. And I was like, and I knew what the problem was, but I wasn't, for somebody that, you know it in the back of your mind, but he was able to crystallize the problem. And the worst part of it all throughout this situation, the previous situation, I was blaming myself. I said, maybe I should have said this, I should have said that. You know how does people second guess themselves. And he said, that's absolutely not the case over here. This is a part of your ticket, this is a part of your roadmap that you have to follow. Okay, fine, I did whatever I had to do, and I found another job after that job. And then it tanked. After 2 weeks, the man just laid me off, cold-heartedly, Erev Shabbos. 10 minutes before Shabbos, I got an email. But this time around, when I got laid off, I was angry, I was hurt, I did shed a tear here and there, but it was not the same type of feeling of distress. So I didn't even call Rabbi Kimmel yet. I didn't say anything to him. I just said, we're going to get through this. That next week, Hashem was watching me. It was unbelievable. Every single day I was on an interview.
Wow. 4
interviews that week. The following Sunday, I interviewed with the last job that I was at. I was hired that following Monday. So Baruch Hashem, all I was out of work was for a week, and I was able to find a job that paid me much better than that previous job. So I'm working at this current job now, and of course, I'm having hiccups again. And I realize that this is a test. Hashem is testing me, and it's all a part of the way things go in life. And I went to see Rabbi Kimmel again to touch base with him. And of course, the office was wonderful. They're always following up. They're chasing me. I'm never chasing them. They always make me feel good that they're caring about me. So I walked in and I told Rabbi Kimmel what's going on. And he told me that this place that I'm working at is a very, very good place. And I'm going to stay there and be matzliach. And I was. the second I left and I started doing what he told me to do, to work on my emunah, which is something I've always had issues with, but I was working on it. Hashem made me into a different person, and at work I was perceived differently, and the whole atmosphere at work was totally different, to the point where, like, wow, I couldn't believe the amount of hatzlacha I was having, and Baruch Hashem that I continued to have. So all I could say is that Rabbi Kimmel never gave me anything to do that was outlandish, anything, out of the ordinary, out of the box, crazy, stand on one leg and jump around and roll in snow. Nothing like that.
Right.
Plain, simple, basic stuff that everybody knows.
Like tefillah.
Like tefillah. He checked my tefillin. There were problems with my tefillah. There were problems with my mezuzah. There was a problem with my Amunah, vis-a-vis not learning enough Svarim on Amunah, so he told me to do the Garden of Amunah, which is fantastic. He told me to focus on Pirkei Avos, so he told me what to buy. He gave me health advice. He told me how to relax, how to deal with certain issues that were plaguing me, just like certain fears that he was able to help me pinpoint and how to get around them. So it has been an unbelievable experience, and I can't tell you enough that for yourself, it is the best investment of your time to just go and meet Rabbi Kimmel. It will allow you to come in contact with yourself and find yourself, because ultimately I think that if people don't find themselves, that's where the root of all suffering comes from, this doubt, because they don't know what's going on in themselves. And you need help to be able to find that in yourself. And I'm privileged to continue to have this wonderful relationship, and I hope to have many, many more years of this relationship.
That's very good. One thing you mentioned right at the beginning, how afraid you were to go in because he was going to see everything, Avera that you did.
Right, because he'd always hear these stories. He walked into such and such, and he said, "Russia, leave! You're doing these Averas." Because in my mind, that was the way I was always preconditioned and pre-programmed, and it was absolutely not the case. It was so the opposite. I was like amazed.
He says, "Oh, that's who it is." He says, "Your father and brother are here, and they both went through heart attacks." He said, what he said was, "I see that they went through the same thing you're going through, and they're coming to give you chizuk that everything will be okay." So that really took me to another level. And at that point he said, "I see you're also very..." Now this I had said to nobody, not even to my sister. He said, "I see you're very afraid that when you close your eyes, you're not going to wake up." And that was my big thing about the heart surgery, because they put you out on anesthesia, and with my overweight and just feeling like everybody in my family died of heart attacks, that I just wouldn't come out of it. So he says, "I see..."
The other thing is the surgery as a kid, where you didn't wake up.
Right, and the anesthesia, it was just very frightening to me. So he said, "I see," and he pauses for a minute and he goes, "When you wake up, you'll have 3 people over you. I see that you will not only be walking, but you will be running." And he said, "At first, the first few days will be difficult, and then you're going to go through 40 days that is going to be difficult, and then everything's going to be fine." And exactly that happened. When I woke up, I looked up and there were 3 people over me. I did have a rough recovery.
Very rough.
The first time they said the fluid hadn't totally gone out of my chest area, and because the heart was pumping extra hard, they had to redo a surgery and drain me. And then, to make things worse, I got an infection, which is very bad news in a heart situation, and they had to put me in isolation. And at first it was not good, and then they gave me a super antibiotic, and everything started working. And finally, fast forward, when I finished, I looked at the time, and I started counting the days, and when I realized my departure date, it was exactly 40 days.
Wow.
And suddenly I said to my sister, I said, I can't believe this. Everything Rabbi Kimmel said exactly happened. And
my sister was very ill. She'd been ill for a long time, and I'd been given the Rebbe her name for a number of times, and he said that he's done certain tikkunim for her, and I believe that her life was extended because of some of these tikkunim. I had come to meet with him the Thursday before, and I gave her name, and he got up, he was pacing back and forth, and he told me 3 days. She was in the hospital at the time. He said 3 days. I said, okay, 3 days. My figuring was that she'd be out of the hospital in 3 days. She was on a respirator. It's a little difficult.
It's okay.
And he told me, he said, this was all predetermined long before she was born. Okay, I figured, okay, there's these serum that she's going through. She was on dialysis, she had a heart condition, she had a hearing condition, she had, unfortunately, a lot of different issues. Anyway, on the other side, my wife was sitting shiva for her mother, and my sister had to go in for a surgery. They did a colonoscopy, and they found a tear, and they had to do a surgery to repair it. I called the Rebbe for a bracha for the surgery, and he told me, he said the tear was there before the test, and he goes, the surgery will go well, and the tear was there before the test. Okay, fine. I called my brother-in-law. I felt a lot of manucha with that. I called my brother-in-law. I gave him that piece of information. And I wasn't too shocked by what the Rebbe told me because I've seen him say things like this before. My brother-in-law was overjoyed with the news, and also a little confused because he comes from a very Litvish background.
Not conditioned to believe that stuff.
Yeah. Okay. But he called me back after the surgery, and he said, listen, I have to tell you, the surgeon came out and he told me 2 things. He said the surgery went well. He said the tear was there before the test. Those are 2 things that he told me. Kachava, that's exactly what happened. Okay? Now, the story doesn't end there. My sister was nifta that Sunday. Okay? Such is the way things go. In helping my brother-in-law to make arrangements for the Levaya, he gets a phone call. He doesn't know what it is. He doesn't understand what the guy's saying. He gives me the phone. It turns out it's the medical examiner. The medical examiner tells me he wants to take my sister to do an autopsy. So why would you do that? He said, well, they found this tear, and they have to determine if the tear came as a result of the colonoscopy or not. I said, listen, the surgery went well. The tear was there before the test. I just copied the words that the Rebbe told me.
Right.
So that's not what the hospital told me. So I can't tell you what the hospital says, but you can call the surgeon. This is what the surgeon told my brother-in-law. He calls me back up afterwards, and he says, you're right, we're not going to do an autopsy. The surgery went well. The tear was there before the test. So the words that the Rebbe told me didn't just give me menucha at the time of a very difficult period, but it also enabled me to stop a further desecration to my sister even after she was nifter.
I was involved in a business, and most of my life I've been very successful in business. And as of late, like most people, my mazel really changed. And no matter what I tried, I didn't have the hatzlacha that I used to have. And I'm a person who goes to shul 3 times a day. I learn every day. I've been going through Daf Yomi many times already. And I put a tremendous amount of importance on my hashkaf and where I am in life. So I made an appointment with Rabbi Kimmel, and I had to wait online, and it was very convenient because he's in Brooklyn, which made it easier. And the first person I met of importance was Moshe, you. And it was incredible how much respect I was treated with, and the softness and the kindness. And that gave me the first clue as to what I was going to experience. It was very important that money was not discussed. It was just taking my name and a small history. And I was ushered into Rabbi Kimmel's office, and he asked me to write down my name, and he closed the door. There was a tremendous amount of privacy between the 2 of us. And he looked at my name, and he started telling me things about my personality. And he was basically on the mark. I mean, it's as if he was looking right into my neshama, and he knew. I've been to other Mekubalim, but Rabbi Kimmel, although he's very young, I'm older than Rabbi Kimmel, but he has the ability to see into people. And what he did do for me was he didn't give me any mumbo jumbo. What he did for me was he gave me tikkunim that he wanted me to get involved in, such as saying Shir Shirim before Erev Shabbos, going to the mikveh at certain times, to be Mavasedra, and to do certain things with tefillos, talking about Tehillim, about finishing Tehillim every week. Everything that he told me to do resonated because it just magnified my avodas Hashem. He didn't promise me anything. All he told me was, do these things to get closer, and we'll see what happens. He also told me that I have a problem with one of my mezuzahs. He said I had a problem with my mezuzah in my bedroom, and he said that the tagim were not good. And although I learned all the time, and I know what tagim was, I didn't realize the difference between the tagim being high on the right side or the left side. But he told me what the difference was. One was with Rahman, one was with Din. And he told me that I had to get a new mezuzah for my bedroom, and I should bring in the old one. But what he did was, he took out a very expensive mezuzah, and he just gave it to me. He says, listen, I want you to have the mezuzah. Not only did he give me the mezuzah, but they didn't charge me for it. And he says, bring in the old mezuzah, and we'll see what happens. Well, in the interim, during this whole time, I made a huge investment in a company about 6 years prior to my meeting with Rabbi Kimmel, and every few months I would call this business. It's an online company to find out as to where my investments were, whether business was good. You know, when you're waiting for something, one becomes anxious. I never got a straight answer. About 2 or 3 weeks after I changed the mezuzah in my bedroom, I get a call from this .com company, which I own a piece of, and they said, David, I just want to tell you something. We're just giving you some of your investment back, and you can expect a check within a few days. But lo and behold, a few days later, I got a check for $47,000. Again, I was not promised anything, but it seems that doing all these tikkunim at least helped me financially, and it made me feel very good that I was doing things that I was supposed to be doing, like saying Tehillim every week, finishing it every week, Bima B'Sedra, which I should have been doing anyhow. So that's basically been my history with Rabbi Kimmel.
He said that he was going to, he closed his eyes for a second, and I went numb, first from the knee down and then from the waist down, and I started laughing. And he said, what's the matter? I said, I don't know what happened. I said, but I'm fully numb from the waist down. He said, I put a shmira on my nehi, on that the level of whatever, and he says it's a good thing that I feel it. But he said the sensation will come back shortly, and it did. Before I left, I came back, but like it was an experience unlike anything else.
Shmira is a spiritual protection for anyone who's doing it. Yeah.
Right.
So, and you literally felt...
I felt nothing.
You felt the Shmira taking place. Yeah. You actually could feel it. Do you usually have these type of feelings when he does things?
I didn't before. But I never had that before I met Rabbi Kimmel, and now more and more it happens. I've gone with him to the Lubavitch Rebbe's Oil, and when he was mechavan with my shame, I felt waves coming off of him. And sometimes if we're davening in the same minyan together, I'll feel a lot of waves coming off of him, and sometimes when he gives me brachas, I feel a tremendous amount from him.
So you're literally feeling the energy and the spiritual changes that he's doing to you.
It's an amazing feeling.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Is that a good feeling or?
Terrific feeling. No, if it wasn't a good feeling, I'd be pretty worried about it. But it's a very warm, comforting feeling. I don't know exactly how to explain it. That I don't really have the vocabulary for it, but it happens more and more now.
I met Rabbi Kimmel about a year ago, And my wife had gone to him, and I have to tell you, this can go to the internet, this can go to any place in this universe. Anybody with anything should just spend time with this Rabbi Kimmel, Rabbi Yitzchak Kimmel, because he really is Rabbi Yitzchak ben Sarah. He is a ben Sarah. He is light, he is joy, he is chizuk, he is pure, unadulterated love, kedusha, and tahara. He gives every last ounce of his energy to people. Each one he sees is his most important person. When I walk into him, my heart jumps, I light up. When I leave, no matter what was on my heart, whether it was about me or a patient or any of my children, I know I have someone whose tikkunim work. I know for a fact they work. I know someone who is helping me in my avodas Hashem. I know someone who I have the privilege of learning with and davening with at 5:30 in the morning on a Friday morning, and then after that I have a full day of work. It's hard, but when he walks in, it's just like I'm breathing pure oxygen. Just to be around him, just to watch him in davening. He doesn't have to move. He just has to give you that smile.
Now I know Rabbi Kimmel spoke about the Arizal's greatness, and that's appropriate. That's what we're supposed to talk about tonight. And I've always had a question to myself. I was always the type of person that I would ask questions. I always want to know why. I always want to know, why does Hashem do certain things? One of the questions that I always had in my mind, why does Hashem put people like the Arizal HaKadosh into this world? What's the purpose? Should we know Torah? Should we know to do the mitzvahs? Should we know all these things? And really it applies also, we're hearing all kinds of stories, and I'm going to tell a few more stories. We heard about Rabbi Bento and a little bit about Rabbi Alfasi, and we saw how spectacular and how deep their ability to see was. And the question really is, why do we have such people in the world? And today, I don't want to compare Yitzchak to Arizal. There's no way. There's no one made to set of baseball cards with statistics, who's number one, who's number two. Obviously, Arizal is much bigger. But we have a person here who everyone, as I said before, everyone has had tremendous experiences with. Experiences that are not normal. If you go around to most people, they would tell you it's impossible for a person to know these things. It's impossible for a person to be so knowledgeable and be able to look so much in depth into a person's life. So the question is, why are there such people in this world who are able to do this? We've had the Satmar Rebbe was like this to a certain extent, and very much in previous generations. And there are these great people. Maybe today there's two or three that I know of that can see so clearly, like Rabbi Kimmel. I don't really know the other two or three, but I don't want to say, because there are people who say that there are other people. So, Baruch Hashem, Rabbi Kimmel is spectacular. And I'll tell you something about a couple of stories about him. Well, first let me try to answer this question. Why would Hashem put such a person and you can walk over to him and you can say, Rabbi Kimmel, why are things not going well in my life? What do I need to do to fix it? And he can look at you and he can give you an answer. That's the amazing thing. He can tell you, you did such and such an Aveira on such and such time, and if you fix this Aveira and you say these tefillas, things will get better. And there are people who did it, and things got a lot better. There's a person in this room, I'm not going to mention his name, actually there's more than one person in this room who did the same thing. Business was not so good, and he wanted to know what he could do to make his business better. And Rabbi Kimmel told him to learn Mishnayos every day. Had to learn Mishnayos and had to learn a certain way, say it a couple of times, and then say the Taich. And he started doing it. He took it to heart and he started doing it. And he was so successful that all of a sudden, for his store, he started to have to order so much more from his wholesalers that the wholesaler wanted to know what's going on. Why is your business suddenly flying? And he told his wholesaler. Next thing you know, his wholesaler showed up to Rabbi Kimmel. Wait a minute, I want in on this. So he came too. So we had another person learning Mishnayos. And there are people who came in. I've seen a guy come in, and Rabbi Kimmel told him, "You're reading the New York Post with your tefillin on." I said, "What? How do you see that?" "I see that you're reading the New York Post with your tefillin on. What kind of comedy is that?" You know? And the guy is in a state of shock. But when faced with that, he's reading. He says, "Yeah, it's true. It's true." So he says, "You got to stop it." So this person took the next step. Then I know there's a story that happened this year. And it happened this year, but it happens all the time, this story. Someone comes in, they want a shidduch for their daughter. Let's make a shidduch for your daughter. Who's good for her? When are we going to find her? And Rabbi Kimmel says, there's someone in her life right now. His name is Aaron. And, he's really a better shidduch than the ones you're talking about. And they look at Rabbi Kimmel and they say, Aaron? I don't know anybody Aaron. I have no idea about anybody named Aaron. I don't know what you're talking about, Rabbi. This is a really typical story. So they go out, and a couple of days later they call back, wait a minute, there is some guy that looks at our daughter very good, and he seems to like her, but he never says anything to her. And his name is, I forgot, I'm going to make up the English name, but his name is Amy. We decided to ask him what his name is, and it turns out his name is Aaron. Is that the person you were talking about? Yes. And Baruch Hashem, this is what happens. Sometimes he tells you something, and a couple of days later, you find out what he meant, which is pretty good. That's something you don't get anymore. Later on, you find out what he meant. Now, I'll tell you another thing. There was a frum person. I'm going to tell you, when we first were starting out, we had an office near Avenue J. And I remember there was a very, very religious woman that came in with her son. She was divorced. And her mazel was horrible. She was just listening to her story. You had to break down and cry just listening to her. And what was going on? She wants to know what's causing my bad mazel. And she's pretty close to a Hasidic lady. I think she was a Hasidic lady, if I remember right. And Rabbi Kimmel looks at her, and he says, I don't know what's going on, but I see, every time I look at you, I see the golden arches from McDonald's on top of you. Are you eating at McDonald's? I know this is a crazy thing to say, but it looks to me like you're eating at McDonald's. You're eating tray. And the woman breaks down and starts crying and says, how could you know? How could you know? And that's exactly what happened. This woman was eating in McDonald's, and it didn't occur to her that might have something to do with why her mazel was not good. Obviously, she stopped to see someone that is able to see so deeply. Your deepest secret, and you can't hide it. So you have to learn a very important lesson. If someone like Rabbi Kimmel can see such a detail like this, it's obvious that in Shemayim, of course they see it. This is just someone who's placed down here by the Rabbi Shalom. But if he's seeing it, that means that in Shemayim, of course they see it. But Rabbi Kimmel is a demonstration that there's someone in Shemayim recording you. There's something going on. I'll give you another demonstration that happened only a few months ago. And this is something a little unusual, but again, a very religious woman came in to see Rabbi Kimmel in his office. And Rabbi Kimmel, this year he's wearing glasses a lot of times. He got a pair of glasses. And he saw something on this woman. He was so shocked. He saw a physical thing around her, usually seeing things in a spiritual way. But he saw something physically around her, and he thought, it's got to be something wrong. Let me take off my glasses to make sure I'm still seeing. He takes off his glasses, he's still seeing it. Puts on his glasses, he's still seeing it. What was he seeing? He saw a giant 4-foot Salem circling around this woman, circling around her and the chair. It was circling around 40 or 60 times a second. It's hard to measure, but it was going around very fast. It was spinning. It was spinning around her. An amazing thing. He's never seen anything like this ever with anyone who walked in by him. And he asked the woman. I think Avram David was in the room at that time. Avram David almost fell down on the floor. Here's a frum lady, dressed sneerstic, top of the line sneerstic from everything. And he asked the lady, "Are you going to church? Is it possible that you're going to church?" And the woman says, "Yeah, I am. Every Friday night I go to shul. Every Shabbos morning I go to shul. And every Sunday morning I go to church. I've been doing it since I'm a little kid." This is an amazing thing. Who would think that a frum person could be in such a situation? And when you talk about rabbis, do they see things? Who in their right mind would ever make up a story and take a guess about seeing someone at church? They saw it, and this is what's going on. This is what's happening. And she meant well. She thought she's doing something good. Some people, it's amazing because most of us here are very frum people, and we don't understand that some people have been brought up from different situations and how they got to where they are. And some people, believe it or not, can get into such a situation. And I believe Hashem understands this and knows this, and He gives the guidance in this world to stop these things from happening. And most of you don't have these type of stories in your imagination. You don't know anyone that fits into this. But today's world, there's amazing things going on, amazing, terrible things. And we have to watch out for our neighbors. But some of these things are so beyond us that we can't even imagine. You would never ask such a question. And for this reason, we have someone like Rabbi Kimmel who sees this clearly. I can tell you a lot of stories like that. I know a frum guy who walked in. I was shocked. I knew the person personally for years and years and years. And he told him, "You're watching Yankee games on Shabbos. You're turning on your TV and you're watching the Yankees on Shabbos." And the guy almost fell down. He was Micah. He's watching Yankee games on Shabbos. It's good to be a sports fan. Maybe it's a little bit of fun. But on Shabbos, after the Shabbos table, can you imagine finishing Smears quickly so you could turn on the TV and see the afternoon game? This guy was doing it. And the outside world, he's from God. And we need to correct these people. Someone needs to be able to see it in order to correct these people. I'll tell you one more story. We used to go together at the beginning when organization was not so big. We used to make trips to Florida. Sometimes we needed to get a couple of new people because we needed to build the organization. So we would go to Florida. Typically what would happen, the first night that we would come to Florida, we only knew the first 4 or 5 people who we would see. And we made a week trip. And we didn't know where we were going to get the next people. But we figured we'll start with the first 5 people. They'll say something. And that's actually what happened. We went to someone's house. They hosted us. Rabbi Kimmel would talk to the first 2 or 3 people. These people, before they would run out the door, they were already making phone calls to their friends to come. And by the next night, we had crowds of people coming. It happened every single time we went to Florida. Every single time we went to Florida. There was one time we did we saw people in a shul, and it was Ma'ariv time came, and people were in the shul. People were banging down the doors. We were supposed to leave the next day to go back to New York. We were seeing people, I'm not kidding, till 4:30 in the morning. We couldn't turn them away. They were banging on the doors. They were screaming, "Using our shul, you have to see us." And that's how it was. That's exactly how it was. Because they understood that this was something that you can't get in a regular place. But I want to tell you one particular story that happened with one of these people in Florida. This particular person came, he had a hotel room that we set up to see people. And there was a Russian woman that came in. And she had her issues, whatever it was. She came with her son. And her son was an ox. Just if he stood up, you wanted to run away from him. He looked like a guy who could kill you with his pinky, and he wouldn't have to even take a breath to do it. He was a looked like a Russian gangster. It was unbelievable. You thought you could die just from looking at him. He was tall, husky, like an ox. It was unbelievable. Anyways, his mother is talking, and he's sitting on the side, and he said something in Russian. He made some kind of comment in Russian. I have no idea what he said in Russian, but it didn't sound good. It sounded like, Tony Rabbi, that kind of thing, but it was in Russian, so we didn't really know. I didn't say anything. You're supposed to be a good guy. If you're a guy, you ignore things, and you don't say anything. And you just go on, you take the hit. Sure, there's always some guy who's going to say something bad about you. You can't, if you came down with the Luchais from Har Sinai with lightning and thunder, there's still somebody who's going to say something bad about you. That's how it works. That's life. But, so Rabbi Kimmel kept quiet, and finished with the mother, and he said, just a minute, I just want to speak to your son for a second. I just want to say something to him. You can see the skeptical Russian, who's the last thing he wants to do is hear something when the rabbi says, I just want to tell you something before you go away. So he sits down, and the rabbi says to him, you notice that business hasn't been good the last 2 or 3 months? Have you noticed that? And then the guy's eyes widen open like, uh-oh. No, that's true. Business hasn't been good for the last 2 or 3 months. And he says, do you wonder why business has suddenly, it was so good all of a sudden until 2 or 3 months ago, and all of a sudden now it's not good? Now you can see the guy's eyes are widening open, because how does he know that? What's going on over here? So he says, yeah, I'd like to know. He says, okay, I'm going to tell you a little story. There was a girl, a Jewish girl, that you made her get an abortion. You made her get an abortion. You forced her. And right now, over your head, I can tell you what I'm seeing right now. I see that little baby who was supposed to come in this world, and that baby is sitting on top of you, holding his hand up. And whenever Mazel is coming down to you, baby's batting it away. Why? Because he was supposed to come down to this world, he was supposed to do his tikkun, and you destroyed his tikkun. So therefore, he was given rishus to stop everything that's coming to you. And that's why nothing's happening in the last 2 months. I have to tell you something. This big, giant, husky Russian suddenly started shaking. I mean, shaking so bad that we had a room full of people outside. He could not get out of his chair to go. He said, next, he couldn't get out of the chair. I went over to him and I said, okay, really, you got to go right now. I put him under the arm. He was shaking and he was crying and he was saying, Rabbi, please tell me what I can do to fix this. You're right, I did do this. Please tell me to fix it. But he went from skeptical to full, flat-out chassid in about 30 seconds there, 40 seconds the whole thing took. And when a person does this is something, I wish I could tell you that it's unusual. It's not. And every single person who's here knows this. And I believe that what Hashem wants from us is that we should understand, we should learn from people like this. That everything in Shemayim is seen. Okay, here's someone who can show you and illustrate to you that everything in Shemayim is seen. I come in sometimes, Rabbi Kimmel tells me, she's having today. Oof, really bad. And it's true, that was a day that was really bad. I was in a rush and tefillin on, tefillin off, and I shouldn't have done that. But I can hide. What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to say, no, you're wrong, Rabbi? He's right, so I can't do that. And this is the ability that he has to see. And I have to tell you something that's very important. Of course, I told you that the most powerful thing that I've always seen are the tefillahs at night. If you know something, I could get the rabbi to daven for people at night. That is the most unbelievable thing. That's the strongest thing. And also, of course, is tikkunim. Is people, we always see something happening when he's doing tikkunim. But there's one interesting thing that happened to me. I want to finish off with one more story that happened to me. When I was a younger child, well, I wasn't so young. It was about 20 years old. My children say that was about 100 years ago. So around that time, when I was 20 years old, I had discussed to learn Rav Chaim Pinchas Scheinberg in Eretz Yisrael. And recess time, you had a long hour and a half. It wasn't called a recess, it was hafsaka really. But you had an hour and a half that you can go out, you know, and do whatever you wanted. You can eat lunch, you can go out, you can relax, you can sleep, you had all these things. And I used to go out a lot of times in front of the yeshiva, you know, take a look at it, see the sunlight, and see things passing by. And it was around twice a week, I used to bump into this person. He used to wear, to me it was very unusual, because when you're American and you see this, it's very, very unusual. He used to wear a white, looked like a linen suit. And he used to walk down past the yeshiva. And there was something about this person who, I saw something in him that he looks to me like a very holy Jew. I had no reason, it's just something that when I saw certain people, I would see that this was a very, very holy Jew. And so what I would do, I felt in Eretz Yisrael, I did this a lot of times, if I saw someone who looked like a very holy person, I didn't know if he was or if he wasn't, but I would run over to him and I would say Shalom Aleichem. At least I greeted the guy, and you know, who knows who I'm greeting and who I'm seeing over there. And once or twice a week this would happen. I was in Eretz Yisrael for a whole year, and this would happen once or twice a week on a regular basis. I had no idea who I was bumping into. I left Eretz Yisrael, and I went to learn by Rabbi Michael Weinberg. But anyways, so I have a friend of mine who stayed there. And, you know, we were talking one day, and I used to always say, you know, I never ever really knew who this guy with he'd always come by, you know. I was in Kiryat Matas, he would always come by once or twice a week in a white. So the guy says, are you crazy, Moshe? You don't know who that was? I said, no, I don't know who that was. He says, Moshe, you were greeting the Baba Sali every week. Twice a week you were saying Shalom Aleichem to him. And you never knew who he was. And to this day, I hit myself in the head. How I was seeing, if I would have known that I was seeing the Baba Sali twice a week, and I would never ask him for a bracha, never did anything, but I did have his chus. I said hello to him, you know. That is something. And with him, guess who was with him all the time? Because later on I found out, and later on I saw him. It was Rabbi Alfasi. Then I recognized him. But here I was just saying Shalom Aleichem, I never asked him more. It's very important. If I would have known, who knows what kind of brachas I could have asked, what kind of yeshivas I could have filed, who knows? I didn't know at the time. And that's the point. Why am I saying this? Because every single one of you have discussed to know Rabbi Kimmel. You don't know what what you see is just the above water thing that you're seeing. You're not seeing what's underwater. You're not seeing, right now, Rabbi Kimmel is still a young person. And who knows where he's going to be in a few years, but it's only going up. That's all I can tell you. And you need to know that you have a very big fuss. You're seeing a person whose mamish nisam are happening every day over here. And that's why I'm telling you these stories. And you have a tremendous opportunity. You got to be close. You cannot lose your opportunity. Don't ever not ask for the bracha. Don't ever pass up the chance. Don't find out later what you missed. That's what I'm really trying to tell you. So in the meantime, I've been speaking a lot tonight. Boy, I can make a radio program, a movie out of this already. But anyways, maybe I will. But for anyone who wants, by the way, one of the projects that I did is I filmed a whole bunch of people, some of them are in this room, talking about their experiences with Rabbi Kimmel. You go to YouTube and you type Rabbi Kimmel documentary, you can see it. It's still in progress. We still didn't finish it. But I want to make sure that everyone understands what a schus it is to be involved with such a person, what a schus it is to support such an organization that's helping so many people. Literally thousands of people have become from talking to Rabbi Kimmel for a few minutes. And I hope that he'll always have this schus and be zaycha to continue with this work and to continue to help people. And we should be all be zaycha to see the Gula Shlema and Harry the